Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Cominos here. Happy Monday to everybody listening. Alan, I got you back in the backstage there. Feel free. We got you at 9:30. Do whatever you need to do. We'll get you up in a half hour, but you're good to go, man. Thank you very much. Hey, Fergs out in TikTok world. Nice to finally get a chance to meet you in person at the Francesca Hong event yesterday. That was absolutely awesome. Shout out to Phil, Keto, Jara Manny, Allie, Grandma Mickey, and so many others that are already trickling into the live here. Lots to jump into here over the course of the next 2 hours. I hope everybody had a solid weekend. Obviously, lots going on in the world of Wisconsin that might prevent one from feeling that way about the way things are trending. And we're going to be focusing on that a little bit before we get into our guest. If you haven't seen my teases on social media, we do have a guest at 9:30, Alan Robinson, who is a community organizer down in the Madison area. There's a lot of people out there, in my opinion, with bad intentions talking about the way things are transpiring in Madison. So I figured, why don't we get somebody that actually knows what the hell they're talking about to talk to us about that for a little bit? That's going to be at 9:30. We're also going to be jumping into the world of national politics in the 10 o'clock hour. DNC taking a bit of heat right now. They are quite literally broke. They do not have the financial standing to move forward. And I have some theories as to why that is. Mainstream media wants to put that on one man, Ken Martin. And I'm here to tell you that no one person is going to be able to convince people that the Democratic Party means business. The party as a whole needs to convince the people that they mean business. And I have more thoughts on that as well. I want to start with what took place this weekend, though, in my own life. And before I do any of that, I'd like to throw a celebratory shout out just to myself. After almost 2 full months of being shadow banned on TikTok, people are actually able to see my content again. I don't know how to react. They try and take my radio station from me. They try and take my social platforms from me. We keep trugging along, though. We're not worried about what they try and do for us. People can see what we're saying here on Outside the Box again. And good morning, Kevin. Welcome to the party. Uh, really quickly, before I get into a pretty messed up story in Oregon that actually is going to kind of relate to what we're talking about in Madison at 9:30, I was invited to speak at the Green Party convention down in Milwaukee yesterday, and I want to say a thank you to Pete Karras, who is running for the Secretary of State here in Wisconsin as a Green Party member. And as a fellow Greek, I have to say, I look for any Greeks in the Wisconsin area doing anything. That's always a nice feeling to see stuff like that happening. But beyond that, I met a ton of people very excited and, more importantly, very frustrated with the way that the two parties are operating. And it was there was a lot of energy in the room. All of the speeches, or I should say most of the speeches, are available. I did live stream the event. If you go on my Tube of You page, as TikTok likes to call it, there is a Green Party convention. It's the most recent live, other than the one you're currently watching right now. Don't watch it now, obviously. We're live doing this. Go check it out after the show wraps up if you're interested in seeing what some of those candidates are about and their ideas on the future of the duopoly, the two-party system, and what that kind of stuff looks like. I also was at the Francesca Hong event, which has gained quite a bit of virality in the world of in social media, because the pictures show a jam-packed Appleton beer factory yesterday for the Francesca Hong event. And for the record, there is another one today, same venue, David Crowley, 5:30 to 7:30. I'm going to be there for that one as well, to see what he has to say. I unfortunately couldn't stick around long enough to see what Francesca Hong had to say, because I had to make my way down to Madison. And as Carla says, and the line was out the door and around the corner to the factory yesterday. She didn't have to wait in the line, but for the rest of us that aren't allowed to cut due to our political standing, it was wild. It was wild how crowded it is. And of course, I'm joking, Carla. I would never throw you under the bus like that. But two solid events back to back for me yesterday, showing a lot of enthusiasm. 10 o'clock hour is going to be focusing on the lack of enthusiasm in politics. So I figure I should at least start out on a bit of a happier note there surrounding that front. But awesome event at the beer factory. I was disappointed that I had to leave, excited to go hang out with my friends in the Green Party. But let's just say I really enjoyed it. And shout out to Tim, who told me he doesn't have a Venmo, but he threw me a couple bucks. a decent amount of bucks, actually, not a couple. He threw me a good chunk of change just to help kind of facilitate me in the interim here as we're between studios. That new studio opening up September 1st, reminder. He told me he didn't have a Venmo, but he wanted to contribute any way he could, and I definitely appreciate that. And to the over a dozen different people that stopped and told me that they still enjoy the show, and it's messed up what ended up happening at that little radio station we often talk about. I appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you very much for the kind words and well wishes. It means a lot to me every single time. So thank you for being you. Now, without further ado, let's get into the news of the day, shall we? I think enough of us have trickled into this conversation at this point that we can get into it. And as I've been mentioning, at 9:30, we're going to be talking about the unfortunate murder that took place in Madison last week, the encampment that has ultimately ended up popping up as a result of it, and just what we're hoping to do to kind of find some kind of middle ground between the way policing has operated and the way we would like to see it happen, and cut through the political BS, the defund the police versus back the blue, and everybody using their own catchphrases and not necessarily really having a conversation about that. But before we get into the Wisconsin of it all, I want to show you guys what the other side of that spectrum looks like. I'm going to share my screen with you guys here. And I apologize to the people on TikTok that aren't going to be able to see. It's just a news report, so it's not like you really have to be able to see it, and we'll be playing the sound for you here in a second. I oftentimes scoff at the idea that progressive politics, left-wing politics, Democratic politics are viewed as the extreme of the two. And it's important for people like myself and other people wired like me to measure their phrases and talk about these things in the appropriate manner. Lord knows I am not an advocate of ICE. I think ICE is a failure. I think ICE was a failure before Donald Trump showed up. It was just quieter about how it was doing things. If you guys have not heard this story yet, it is a wild story. It is in Oregon. I'm going to play the local story here for you in a second, but the long and short of it is men are dressing up like ICE agents, and any of you listening are politically engaged enough to know dressing up like ICE agents means not identifying yourself in any way and wearing a mask. We've been warning about a hypothetical where people might start doing that and not be agents of ICE. I'm going to play this clip for you now. You're going to hear what took place, and more importantly, you're going to hear what the reaction is and what Tom Homan tells you is the appropriate thing to do in this manner. And it's exactly as bad as you think it is. Give this a listen.
State police and the FBI after a group of men posing as ICE agents, they say, pulled over a driver in Clackamas County, detained, and then assaulted them. Catherine Cook spoke with community members. And Catherine, it sounds like this might not be the first time.
No, David, and they fear this will keep happening as long as actual ICE agents conceal their identities and refuse to show warrants and other arrest documentation.
On this dusty stretch of Highway 211, east of Woodburn, 3 men, allegedly posing as ICE agents, pulled someone over and assaulted them. This, according to Oregon State Police and the FBI. They say it happened the afternoon of July 17th. Investigators say the men were driving a blue or gray SUV with no license plates that had flashing red and blue lights. The men wore green shirts, face coverings, and tactical vests labeled police, and one of them had a rifle. After pulling the victim over, police say the men forced them out of their car, searched them, held them in their SUV, and assaulted them before finally letting them go.
This is the kind of attacks that we were afraid would actually happen. We know that when ICE roams the streets without any kind of identification, any kind of accountability, that's the message you're sending to people, that this kind of stuff is okay.
Rena Lopez is president of PICUN, Oregon's farm worker union. She says community members have spoken of similar incidents involving ICE impersonators. She's grateful police are investigating this case and alerting the public.
And anyone can put on a mask and refuse to identify themselves and claim that they're ICE. And these types of incidents are only going to intensify. If they are approached by someone who claims to be an ICE agent, remember that you have rights.
In Woodburn, community members like Luis want their neighbors to remain calm and informed.
A estar alertas, a estar pendientes.
He said, stay alert and look for exact information and stay respectful of the laws. We have the right to remain silent. Organizations like Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition send volunteers to authenticate ICE activity for those who call their hotline. In a statement to KGW, PERC condemned the incident and said the victim's family reached out to them last week. Quote, the reality is there is very little visible difference between ICE kidnapping someone and armed criminals kidnapping someone. ICE is deliberately exploiting a legal gray zone where people aren't sure if they can call 911 to report violent traffic assaults from unmarked people acting like police. This is a human rights issue endangering all Oregonians.
Police say if you're unsure whether a traffic stop is legitimate, consider stopping in a well-lit area or a spot where there are several people present. Anyone with information on this case or who may have encountered someone posing as law enforcement is asked to contact Oregon State Police. Dave.
Now, I want you guys to really think about how ridiculous that statement is. We're talking about a government agency that is operating with such impunity that we have local news operations saying, look, if you're questioning whether or not the masked goon not identifying themselves in any way as a government agent or not, maybe make sure there's 3 or 4 other people near you where you're pulling over to make sure that these people aren't just whack jobs trying to kidnap you. And that's supposed to be acceptable. We watched the murder of Corey Ruiz just last week, and there has been a reaction to that. People are blocking traffic. We're watching press conferences get interrupted. We're watching concerts get interrupted. And people say, look, if the left isn't careful, the radical nature of all their beliefs is going to end up costing the Democrats the election. So they have to be really careful about the way that they do things. Meanwhile, this is what's going on with right-wing control of the House, Senate, presidency, and Supreme Court. And everyone's acting like, well, sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. Like, forgive me, but I would argue of the 2 quote-unquote extremes that have been presented by the 2 different parts of the political spectrum right now, give me what's happening in Madison 7 times a week and twice on Sundays rather than what we've been dealing with here in Oregon with people dressing up like ICE agents, grabbing people off the street. We shouldn't be acting like this is normal or acceptable by any stretch of the imagination. And yet that seems to be the place that we find ourselves in. And I see KG out in Houston saying that she thinks the Trump administration is actually banking on some kind of an incident with ICE. And I agree with you. I agree with you because there's going to be that level of unease as to whether or not somebody's actually an ICE agent or not. And I think we've seen enough videos to know that they're not going to treat you with respect or dignity. And all it takes is one person. We're a country of 370 million people. All it takes is one person who gets screwed with on the wrong day, and people are going to act like this is some kind of widespread issue facing, the overwhelming majority of the population. We know that they're going to do that. It's the game plan that they try and use all the time. She says they want to use citizens defending themselves as an excuse to escalate, which I would agree with that. CKK says pulling into a well-lit populated area has long been advice when you are unsure of the circumstances. People have impersonated police as long as there have been police. Yes, but impersonating police used to mean actually having a uniform, having a badge. There were things that you could look for that you'd be like, that doesn't feel right. Now it's guy in a mask wearing a black shirt. Give me a mask and this shirt, and all of a sudden I'm an agent of ICE. It's a little bit different than impersonating a police officer because at least there were identifying markers of what a police officer would be. In my opinion, at least. Jim says, sorry, I'm trying to stay on focus here. Keto says, and MAGA says the left are bad, how the tables have turned. I would agree with that. It seems it's a laughable suggestion to me that what we're watching happen shouldn't be viewed as extremist. It bothers me very much watching, whether you take it into the more trivial world, as for instance, tax cuts for wealthy people versus increasing their taxes tremendously. Everyone always says, well, you don't want to tax too far, otherwise you're going to be viewed as extremist. I'd argue what we're doing right now is extremist, and I have to I need someone to explain to me why it is that the liberal part of the agenda seems to believe that Republicans are capable of getting away with being the very obvious extreme of their flank, whereas Democrats, any suggestion pushback against a broken system is viewed as though it is something too far, a bridge too far for the average American to be able to tolerate, and therefore they need to temper their expectations and expect a little bit less. It's kind of wild to me that that's the case. But and I see you, Ali, saying use the StreamYard link. I have a guest who's waiting, and that kind of messes with it. I'll be bringing guests up after, or excuse me, callers up after we do our guests here. Alan, I see you standing there. I know we said 9:30. Are you good to jump into the conversation right now? You can just give me a thumbs up if you wanna do this here. Are you good to go right now? Yeah, cool. All right, so I have a guest, and I feel like this is as good a point of any as to kind of jump into this here. We're speaking with Alan Robinson. He is a community organizer down in the Madison area. I'm bringing you on stage now, Alan. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm as well as one can be under the circumstances. Ben, how you doing?
I understand that. I'm okay. I'm okay. And I know you and I spoke a little bit on the phone yesterday. You kind of haven't stopped moving since the moment. It seems like you're pretty active even when we're not dealing with one of these kind of instances in the town there. And it seems like you're doing whatever you can to kind of facilitate what's happening down there. So it's appreciated.
Yeah, man, I'll sleep when I'm dead. You know, in my capacity as the executive director of the Satori Recovery Project, we deliver direct services to people who are unhoused and people who use drugs. I'm also the director of operations for Wisconsin's first drug users union. You know, it is my personal belief that people who are closest to the problems are often closest to the solutions. That solutions are generally closely oriented to the problem, right? The difficulty is that decision makers are seldom closely oriented to the problem. As a result, they impose policies on people without being fully informed of what's happening on the ground or how those policies are going to impact those people. So as far as like the opioid settlement dollars and things like that, my job is basically to ensure people who use drugs have an advocacy seat at the table and that their advocacy is effective in creating those policies. Now, when it comes to Corey Ruiz, he was an unhoused person who used drugs. And so knowing the area as I do, when I heard someone was murdered by the police, you know, in that area, I figured it would be an unhoused person. I figured it would be a person who uses drugs in some capacity, right? Whether that's just smoking weed or whether that's anything more dangerous than that, right? So I went down right away because, you know, in my professional capacity, this is the community I serve. I want to know what's going on with the people in my community, right? So I just jumped right in and have been doing the work since it happened.
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly invaluable work. I've lived in the Fox Valley for the last 4 years, but I'm from the city of Pittsburgh originally, and I would always state that I think a lot of people in this region of Wisconsin talk about what's happening in Madison, talk about what's happening in Milwaukee from a bit of a perspective of not necessarily understanding it. That's not to say that we don't have a homeless population or unhoused population up here in the Fox Valley, but relative to what I was used to dealing with in Pittsburgh, it's very negligible relative to what's normal. And I think people have a somewhat cartoonish attitude towards how you end up in that situation, what it's like once you're in that situation, the hurdles that you have to jump over to get out of that situation. And so, your advocacy, you coming out on programs like this, speaking to an audience that maybe isn't as well versed in the matters, I think might provide some perspective that otherwise wouldn't be attainable just through sheer personal empathy or trying to understand it. Somebody who kind of has boots on the ground there. So I guess let's start with the basics here about Corey, and then we're going to expand larger and larger into the encampment that's going on, and we're eventually going to look into your op-ed that you wrote for 365, which I found absolutely fascinating, just in the way you organized it, let alone what you had to say. But so you clearly had interactions with Corey prior to what took place last week, and a little bit about the man before we move on.
Honestly, I hadn't had any interactions
totally.
with Corey, so I'll be frank in saying that, if anything, in passing, right? But I did not. I knew that in that area, right there on that block where the Willie Street Co-op, Cafe Coda, Bank of America, where those things are all located, Mad Street, Madison, and there is a service there, right? And in one of those buildings that serves the unhoused community, that serves people who use drugs. They provide harm reduction materials. They provide safe use supplies. They, food, day shelter. It's really, it's an all around good service. And of course we need more of those services, but knowing that the circumstances surrounding Corey, right, consist of poverty and the criminalization of poverty, right? So a report of someone checking cars, now everybody's property deserves to be safe. People deserve to be safe, right? But the report of someone checking cars, well, checking cars, checking car doors, that's a act of desperation, right? That's somebody who is impoverished and someone who's looking to get whatever they can, right? That kind of property crime isn't at all excusable, but that's the kind of property crime that people who are unhoused get into. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Crime is a matter of circumstance, and we act like it's a matter of wanting to be acting that way. And I think it's a childish attitude. Is that a good way to sum up what you're saying?
Absolutely. Right. So knowing like the general circumstances around it, or having heard the general but really at that point, all I heard was that someone had been shot by the police. Right. And so I immediately thought, if they're shooting somebody on Willie Street, 9 times out of 10, right, it's going to be a black person, because whenever they have a use of force issue in Madison, they always seem to figure out de-escalation when it's a white guy or a white girl or a college student. Yeah. But whenever it's a black person, it seems as if the Madison Police Department throws their standard operating procedure completely out the window, and then they behave as if this is the most dangerous person on the planet, which is evidenced in other ways, right? In the way that they police just the downtown entertainment district. For instance, we've got bars downtown right now. The City Bar, there was an incident there where there were 147 people in the bar, and the police went in, gave out 145 tickets for underage drinking. They only had 2 bartenders on staff. Okay. There's never a grip of police outside of the City Bar. They're never over policing that to ensure that there's no underage drinking. Just this past in June, late June, the Boys and Girls Club had a white party. The Boys and Girls Club is a children organization. It was formerly ran by a prominent black man here in Madison who I knew, but I wasn't close with. And that gentleman, tragically passed away unexpectedly last June. I'm talking about Mr. Michael Johnson. That event went on without him and posthumously honoring him, right? Outside, that was on State Street at a large venue on State Street, same as the City Bar, right? Where the City Bar is known to have all of these underage infractions and violent encounters and things, right? No police outside the city, but you go outside the white party at the Boys and Girls Club, there were police everywhere. Right? So in Madison, we don't police trouble spots. We tend to police demographics. We tend to police culture, right? The blacks are coming out. They're probably bad.
So I have to believe, and we're speaking with Alan Robinson out in Madison, it's not breaking news to me what the situation is, but I think a lot of people who look at Madison or any liberal city from the outside would probably assume the opposite. They assume safe on crime. They assume woke. They assume that they're beyond race. And your experience has been something that's entirely different than that. Basically, your entire, probably even beyond your professional career, but especially doing what you're doing now, that couldn't be further from the truth, it sounds like.
Madison is the single most performative, progressive city on the face of the planet. This is a place where you can go into any neighborhood and see a Black Lives Matter sign, but you can walk for blocks and not see a black resident. This is a place where you can go out and to any restaurant on any given night, and you will see a predominantly white crowd. As a matter of fact, I go out often. One of my favorite establishments is the Tornado Room. I love a good steak. I am often the only black person there. I love to go to Lucille's. I'll sit at the bar and I'll taste some of they brew their own beer, or they bring in other like stock beers or whatever, like artisanal beers, some shit like that. Yeah. And I love to try them out, right? I'll be sitting at the bar and be the only black person there. I look up and see a big, gigantic Black Lives Matter flag. Now, mind you, the staff are always nice to me, right? And if I do see another black person there, they're likely working there. They're not enjoying the space, right? So that speaks to the disparities, the economic disparities. In Madison, the median black income is 50% that of what the median white income is, right? That's a matter of a lack of economic investment. That's a matter because we don't own businesses here. We don't own houses here. We are priced out as far as rents go, right? When there are no opportunities to create a sustainable life, what do you expect, right? So the city wants to pretend that it's doing all of these things, but at the same time, we have $100 million investment in public safety, and what we get for that investment, the return on that investment, is an incarceration rate that exceeds apartheid South Africa by 65%. Right? So we incarcerate people here at an appalling rate, black people, right? Madison spends a lot of money to ignore those problems and to hide them so that they can continue the facade of being an incredibly progressive and liberal city, while in truth, the underbelly is very much exclusionary.
Yeah, I believe that. I was at a Green convention. I was speaking at the Green convention in Milwaukee yesterday, and it was, I'd say, half and half crowd, white and black, and there were quite a few black speakers, including Carlos Dixon, who we'll be talking about here in a little bit. But they were oftentimes lamenting their frustration with the Democratic Party, and while it's obviously, relative to what the other half of the political spectrum is offering, it's kind of a no-brainer. But the ways in which the black community shows up for liberal parties, liberal cities, things of that nature, only to kind of be left behind based on the explanation you're kind of giving me right now, is it's very pervasive. I don't even think I can tell you right now, it's not unique to Madison. 'Cause I'm telling you, Pittsburgh isn't too far off from what you're talking about either, from my own lived experience. So, I mean,
Sure.
go ahead.
I'll tell you, man. The difference between the Democrats and the Republicans are, for Black people at least, is that we are asked to choose between open hostility on the Republican side and polished neglect on the Democrat side. Madison is a city that has been run by Democrats for generations, and yet we are a city that houses some of the worst disparities in the nation for Black people. I don't believe that those are bugs of the system. I believe that those are features.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for me to trust the Democratic Party based on the fact that it's always, well, just wait one more cycle.
Yeah. We're always one cycle away, but it turns out solving these problems doesn't bring the money in. Seems to be the general consensus there once you actually put some of these things to bed.
I also have a real problem with anybody who wants me to trust them and they are super eager to make a deal with a bigot.
Yeah.
I've never wanted to find consensus with a racist or a bigot or a fascist. I've never wanted to do that. We're not on the same. I'm a veteran of the United States Navy. I am anti-fascist.
Yeah.
Duh. I'm an American.
Yeah. It became a bad word overnight, it feels like, probably because people don't know how to define it. But nevertheless, let's get into, so I'm going to marry this conversation with the op-ed you wrote, but I want to start with the encampment that's going on. The open hostility half of the equation, the Republican half of the political spectrum. Anytime something like what is happening in Madison right now happens, it is immediately weaponized against Democrats, the left, all minorities, immigrants, fill in the blank. This is what you get if you elect Democrats, blocking the streets and these encampments and lawlessness and crime and all these different things. What's your experience on the ground with what's actually happening in the encampment relative to the way the media is trying to portray it?
Yeah, I'm not seeing, frankly, some of the protests, these protests are an enigma, right? Many of them have been organized and disorganized at the exact same time. At the encampment in and of itself, all that you're seeing is a bunch of community members coming together to keep the residents of Craze, the Corey Ruiz Autonomous Zone encampment. You're seeing residents come together to keep folks in there safe, to keep them fed. Yesterday, we had an incident where someone had maybe fallen down and actually bumped their head, right? They were laying there we called in emergency services, barricades were moved back. We were able to get emergency services in. We got that guy seen to, got him out just fine. There weren't any problems like that, right? This is not lawlessness. This is really what you're saying is community come together to honor Corey, to protest the conditions under which this situation evolved from, right? And in solidarity, folks are coming together in solidarity. And I can understand why that would frighten the Republicans, because they are individualists. They are because it's much easier to take advantage of you if you feel like you have to stand alone as opposed to standing with everyone else. So of course it provides a prime opportunity. Never waste a crisis. Of course it provides a prime opportunity for them to push it back on Democrats and say, well, look at the lawlessness. But that's just not what's happening.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by your assessment of matters whatsoever. Let's talk about the effectiveness of this, though. And it's interesting. You wrote an op-ed, which I don't believe, is it published yet, or that's happening later, or can people read it
It's
now?
It's going to be published a little bit later this morning. Late morning is what we're looking at, but it's a pretty dope article.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it, and we'll tell you guys how to find it so you can hear the entire thing. But To compare it to a different protest, the No Kings protests that have been put together, tremendous organizing effort, but what was always the main criticism against No Kings? What are you asking for? What's going to happen on the other side of this? What change is being enacted as a result of these millions of people that find time on a Saturday to go out and stand up against something they deem to be inappropriate? You have one part of your article that you wrote that says every demand needs an address. Every demand needs to be handled in some way, whether that be through words, action, policy, whatever the situation may be. How can we go about achieving those kind of goals when it feels like, and you kind of lean into this as well, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, there's a lot of hands in the pot, whatever analogy you want to use. There really isn't one finite set of goals that people are looking to achieve right now. So how is that achieved through your experience, and in your mind, how do we get to that point where we can get these demands at least addressed, if not taken care of?
Sure. So in regards to that, government is purposefully confusing, right? Imagine walking into a large mansion and saying, these are the things that I want to get out of this mansion. Now you got to go through different rooms to get to what it is that you want to get to. Now the mayor holds a set of keys to a certain set of rooms. The county executive holds a completely different set. You're looking at the police chief and the common council. They all hold different sets. So does the state legislature and the governor. Everybody has a different room that things are in, right? So what I'm seeing in the demands, and these are demands that were put forward by the family, right? There are three basic demands right now that have been put forward by the family. And the only issue with those demands is that we're asking for things that are in different rooms controlled by different officials that have completely different sets of keys, right? And so when you ask for DCI, the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigations, when you ask them to open their records to the Office of the Independent Monitor, you're actually asking for the legislature to change state law, and then you got to get the governor to sign off on that, right? Because that was a bill that was put into play by Supreme Court Justice Chris Taylor back when she was in the legislature. Now, so that's a process. And here's the honest to God truth. The Republicans control the legislature. They are not going to do that.
Yeah.
They are not going, and I'm not necessarily sure that's my own personal opinion, right? I'm not necessarily sure that a state agency should bow to a municipal organization or a municipal agency. I do, however, think that a state agency does owe the Office of the Independent Monitor cooperation and timely access. I think so. The thing is, state law says that they don't have to do that, right? So just like the states cannot supersede the federal government, Madison cannot supersede the state of Wisconsin. The Office of the Independent Monitor is a city agency. It can't tell the state. Imagine the city attorney trying to tell the attorney general what to do. It just doesn't work that way, right? So what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that the demands that we have, you can't demand something from someone if they can't give it to you, because you're only setting yourself up for failure, right? So you got to make sure that your demands are coordinated with what is in the actual power of the people you're demanding things from, right? And of course, you have to make sure that those are delivered to the right places. I'm not saying that demanding that state law be changed it's possible. It's gonna be hard, but we got to make sure that we deliver that demand to people that that can actually institute that change, as opposed to coupling it with things that we're demanding from the council, because the common council it just can't do that. Neither can the mayor.
Sure. What I have to believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're speaking with Alan Robinson, community organizer in Madison. One of the demands has to be surrounding the officer involved in the shooting.
Yeah.
Look,
The
we
arrest
all
of the
have
officer.
eyes. We're waiting for evidence. I get that. At the very least, there should be a conversation about competency and the ability to do the job, and whether or not that person has the ability to do the job. I was fired last month. I was the #1 rated talk show in our market, and I was fired for doing the job well. We have video of this guy operating this way. What do you think it says about the standard, the thin blue line, whatever you want to define it as, that this person, he's on administrative leave, which is protocol for the situation. Should he very minimally at least not have the authority to be in this position again? Is that the consensus? Or maybe people are expecting much further. I'm more of a, while I think I know what my eyes are showing me, I will wait until the investigation is all said and done before jumping to conclusions. But at the very least, when that's the video, that feels like the end of your policing career. And we can't even get to that point. You talk about deliverables. I feel like that part can be delivered upon.
Yeah, you would have to be a very well-seasoned pimp to get me to not believe my eyes. I know what I saw, like, for real. I know, I know what I saw,
Yeah,
right? I know what I saw. I also understand what is reasonable. I understand that you have to reevaluate the threat after every trigger pull. From what I understand, his actions were both egregious. It was an egregious use of force, right? So for me, at the very minimum, he should be arrested. For me, at the very minimum, he should be tried. Even if it's a bad case, he should be tried, right? Now here's the practical reality in Wisconsin. And it's crap, right?
Yeah.
Because the Police and Fire Commission control whether or not a police officer or a fireman or a firefighter loses their job. They control the discipline. The end, period, by state statute. Now, if they're not charged with anything, and the Office of the Independent Monitor can just say, well, they didn't follow the standard operating procedure. They can make a recommendation to the Police and Fire Commission, but the recommendations are just that, suggestions. And just because somebody suggests something to you doesn't mean that you have to do it, right? So the Office of the Independent Monitor doesn't have any teeth, and it can't have any teeth by state statute, right? So if you want to change that, you have to deliver that demand to the state legislature, which again is controlled by Republicans who don't care whether or not Black people are murdered at exorbitant rates by the police. They just don't care. They view that as public safety, right? So for whatever reason, the only person who has a charging and who holds charging power is the district attorney. Now, true, the police, if they suspect that they have probable cause, they can arrest someone, right? They won't be making that arrest, not of one of their own officers. That is not a practical reality. The only person that can actually, that in the realm of possibility, that could say, we're going to arrest this officer, is District Attorney Ismail Ozan. He's not going to make that decision until after DCI finishes its investigation and delivers an investigative file to the district attorney. At that point, he's going to look at it and determine whether or not he thinks he has any criminal wrongdoing. If he thinks that there's evidence of criminal wrongdoing, then he can move forward with charges, an arrest. Even if he thinks that it's a bad case, even if he thinks he's going to lose at trial, He can still have the gentleman arrested. He can still charge him. He can still go forward, right? That's all his decision, but that's a timing matter. You got to wait until DCI finishes its investigation, right? So, like, if you're asking me if he should be arrested, if you're asking me if I think that that's a reasonable demand, of course it is. If you're asking me if it's going to happen, well, history has told us probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. The only, as somebody in the comments mentioned, it's the only union that seems that can get support from the right. And it seems like it's for the reasons that you're talking about right there. From a political perspective, and you and I chatted a little bit about this off the air personally yesterday. We have gubernatorial candidate Francesca Hong showing up to the protest with a bullhorn. We have Carlos Dixon, who is running for governor, showing up at the press conference, kind of interrupting it there, both of which getting quite a bit of news and notoriety from the decisions that they made to try and get their voices heard on the matter. And for the record, I've had both of them on this show, and I'm intending to have Carlos on again, so I'm not setting you up. I'm not trying to, start anything here, but your perspective on the matter surrounding both the optics as well as the efficacy of these measures to kind of try and draw eyes to the situation or make it known that maybe the protesters aren't as alone as they may feel politically.
I want to just be clear. Francesca did not show up with a bullhorn. I was there when she, I actually, when I arrived, she was sitting quietly next to the memorial, and she was sitting in community, and she was sharing space with the people in community quite respectfully. I left before the bullhorn incident because this was shortly after everything had gone down, and it had been a very long day for me, so I didn't personally witness the bullhorn, like what she said or any of that. I did, however, really, I told her, thank you for coming out. I appreciate you, sitting respectfully and sharing the space, right? And I appreciate that, because for me, I have noticed that Fran hasn't said anything or much of anything about Black people or the disparities we face in Wisconsin. And frankly, in order to win in November, you have to build coalitions. You can't win without Black people in Wisconsin if you're a Democrat. You can't. We're too large of a population demographic. So it just doesn't make any sense, right? Considering that there was an Asian shopkeeper who shot a Black kid in the back and got off on self-defense. 2 weeks later, or a week and a half later, we had Carmelo Anthony getting sentenced to 35 years and his self-defense argument being thrown out the window. But you can shoot a kid in the back if you're an Asian shopkeeper. There was a lot of tension between the Black and Asian community at that time. There's talk of boycotts. I missed manicures and pedicures because of it. Wild shit is happening in the streets. So to me, it felt derelict and quite neglectful for Fran not to speak up about that. I was kind of shocked, right?
Sure.
That said, she came out, she showed up, she showed some support. I certainly do appreciate that. When it comes to Mr. Dixon, I won't disparage another Black man in front of white people because I know y'all be watching. That said,
yeah.
Right? I think it's important for local people in the community to speak for themselves. While I do think outside voices can contribute to the conversation, I think that it's best that those outside voices be respectful of the voices of the people who are in the room, who are in the community, who have to deal with these circumstances every day. Visitors, when you visit somebody else's house, I don't care what Charlie Murphy say. if it's fuck my couch, you have to get out.
Yeah. I hear that, and I appreciate the correction as well surrounding the bullhorn. I have a specific way of talking that isn't always as accurate as I need it to be, so I appreciate the sentiment there. So,
Well, I mean, the optics of that are a little bit different, right? Like you bring a bullhorn, meaning you got something that you want to say. Somebody hands you a bullhorn, I mean, somebody wanted to hear what you had to say.
yeah. Yes, exactly. I think that's very important distinction to make there. So I appreciate that very much. I'm just about out of questions, but I do want to go back to your op-ed here really quickly. You have one section titled "Corey's death did not begin with the first gunshot," and I think this is an important note for you and I to kind of wrap our conversation up on, because a lot of times I even stated, not that it wasn't happening, but up until this moment, the concept of police brutality and minority struggle with the police felt like it had taken a back seat narratively in the media world, until you have moments like this happening. And then it kind of feels like your world's collapsing in on you again. But the problems are there before this moment happens, and it falls out of the narrative. And people like myself are guilty of that as well. It's a matter of staying on point there. So when you say the death didn't begin with the gunshot, what does that mean? And what can we do when it isn't in the spotlight, when inevitably that next thing happens that's going to take all of our attention away from this? What can we do to facilitate movement forward, to prevent, to the best of our ability, these kind of moments in our lives?
You know, they say nothing happens in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Nothing happens in a vacuum. Things here are quite interconnected, and one domino knocks another domino down. Madison spends an exorbitant amount of money, like I said, ignoring the problems. So when we say it didn't start with the gunshot, it started with the lack of investment and economic opportunity for Corey. It started with poverty, and then the next domino that knocked down was the municipality criminalizing poverty. Well, there's illegal encampments, and you can't camp here. You can't be poor on the streets. You can't be poor and on the streets. Not at the same time. Not if you're black, right? So
Yeah.
like, you look at those things, and then you realize that this was set in motion through policy, through the fact that, well, they tore down the tiny homes, right? Putting almost 100 people back on the streets. Why would you do that? And then you're going to criminalize poverty, right? So people are pushed towards desperate activity, right? Now, I'm not saying like being desperate doesn't excuse personal accountability. Hey man, I like to speed. I recognize that I shouldn't and can't, right? But
Yeah.
you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
People will break the law. This is why we have laws, because we already know people are going to break.
Yeah.
But criminalizing poverty doesn't make anything better, right? What we need to spend those resources on are investments in the community, ensuring that people have employment, right? The black unemployment rate here in Dane County is twice that of the white unemployment rate. That's important. Why is that? Why don't we own businesses here? Where's the lack of economic, and why is there such a lack of economic investment in that community? Right? It just doesn't make any sense. If you look at even the Dane County jail population, on the daily average for black residents of the Dane County jail, 55%. We are 5% of the population in Madison, and the FBI crime report tells us that black people and white people commit crimes at the same rate. So how is it possible that the closest demographic to us, which is the Asian population here, account for 1%, of the Dane County jail population at any given time. That's 12, maybe 13 people at the most, right? So it just like the numbers don't make sense unless it's a systemic oppression, right? Unless you are over policing and harassing one very specific community. And not to mention, in doing so, if black people and white people are committing crimes at the same rate, then how many crimes are going uninvestigated, unreported, and unattended to in these white communities? So what are we actually paying for in regards to public safety? Right?
Right.
The results don't make any sense. The truth of the matter is white supremacy hurts black people and white people. But white folks don't necessarily want to see that because it hurts them in a completely different way.
That's a tale as old as time, honestly. And I mean, I've experienced it. I grew up in white suburbia and I moved to the city where it was more so a 50-50 split. And I've been invited to, the barbecues. I've been like the white guy, and I have had moments where, like, just to be frank, I can't use direct verbiage because TikTok will ban me. But no matter what barbecue I go to, jazz cabbage is getting passed around there, like we're having a good time. Only one time was the party interrupted by police for no reason other than a suspicious smell, and I'm sure you can. And I watched it happen firsthand. I watched the mode get thrown off, and then I watched my friends, the people that were there, get aggressive back to the police. And I'm sitting there having been kind of oblivious to this until I was 23 years old and just being like, oh God, I understand why you guys are mad right now. And also the fact that everyone's acting this way is only going to further the problem now, although you should be pissed off. It's such a sticky conversation for anybody that doesn't want to experience it firsthand, that hasn't been in a position to see exactly what the disparity looks like. Because you're exactly right. The laws are getting broken at the same level. It's a matter of where are the actual eyes. And
right.
Not where I grew up.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the black delegation has suspended all cookout invitations until America finishes its racism.
Yeah.
It's got a full plate of racism that it hasn't touched. And so it cannot have a serving of peach cobbler until it finishes that main course.
Yeah. I feel
that's
that.
where I stand on it.
I get it.
That said, and I'll just leave it like this, right? We don't have cannabis reform in Wisconsin because the police use it as a tool to
100%.
over police and harass black and brown people. Oh my God, I smell weed. Now let's search, right? Doesn't matter whether or not chemically indistinguishable from legal hemp. Well, the police do not have to accept your explanation of it. They can just, I think it's illegal.
Right.
I just told you I bought it from a hemp store. Well, I think it's illegal.
Right. And then
they search
in your system, and then it stays in your system for 30 days. But all the guys on Wall Street, what they're doing is in and out of their system in 2 or 3 days. I see it. I know exactly what you're saying, and I don't think you're off base at all with the way that you're saying it either. I think it's a fair assessment. We've been going for almost 45 minutes. Is there anything I missed? Is there something that you want to, if you have, the floor is yours. Is there one final message you want to get out there to people listening that would be a good note for us to wrap the conversation up on?
If you are outside of Madison, come down, come see the encampment, come bring some supplies, bring ice, be a part of the community. Write to, well, there's nobody that you can write to. There's no help that you can give aside from, coming down, being a part of the protests, and engaging peacefully if that's what you want to do. These are peaceful protests. If you are inside of Madison, I don't want to engage in any emotional terrorism. I want to let you know that the encampment is safe. I do not believe that the police are going to be coming in to rip us out of the encampment or anything like that. And not in any given time or in the foreseeable. Why would they want to do that? Why would they do that? It's only going to it's only you just got to think about it. It's only going to make things worse if they do that, right? So what the city is hoping for is a peaceful resolution to the encampment. They don't want to bring in law enforcement because they know that that's going to garner national attention. Our mayor she just launched her reelection campaign. People have elections coming up, man. They don't want that kind of drama. They don't want that kind of stain on their on their campaign. You got to recognize where people are operating from, right? So, just be supportive, be unified, stand in solidarity with people. That is how we beat fascism. We do not beat white supremacy with black supremacy. We beat white supremacy with solidarity. We do not beat capitalism and fascism with anything other than socialism. That's how we win, by standing with one another. So I encourage you to do more of that. Ben, I certainly do appreciate you having me on, and keep fighting the good fight, man.
Same to you, man. When are you running for office? We getting you on the ballot soon? We getting you on the ballot? No,
I don't have any interest in lying to the people like that.
I love it. You got my vote when you make the decision. How do we find that article later? 365 Wisconsin?
Go to Madison 365, search Allen Robinson. It'll be my third article up in the last month or so. Take a look at all three of them. The first one, What It's Like to Be Black in Madison, gives you a little bit of perspective. The second one there, Representation is Not Liberation. It illustrates exactly how white supremacy puts on blackface in the form of black politicians, and the accountability that we have to the community, and the responsibility that we have to ensure that these institutions that we have been elected into are uncomfortable, right? It's a great article. Give it a good read. But this latest one, I got to tell you, man, it's a long read, but it's well worth it, because I go into a lot of detail about the mechanics at play here, and some of the politics in stake. And unfortunately, a lot of this has gotten really personal between some of these some of the office of the Independent Monitor and some politicians, right? It's gotten really personal, and so there's vendettas at play. Corey's death didn't happen in a vacuum. The office of the Independent Monitor being interjected into this conversation is both fortunate, but also really unfortunate, because I don't think that the political side of things should impact how we honor and remember him, how we respect the wishes of the family, and how we come together as a community to move forward into a better future for all of us.
Perfect. And one of my moderators, Ali, threw the link up for that website in the live chat there. So anybody who's listening to Alan speak, just follow the link there. People are asking for normally I interact with the live chat as it's happening, but I have this has been such a good flow that I kind of didn't want to throw the conversation off here. But people are asking if you have socials or how they can support what you're trying to accomplish right now. Is there somewhere you can point the people in the chat right now?
Yeah, man. You can find me on this Allen Robinson at facebook.com or Allen Robinson. Is it this one? I think let me just.
Yeah, do your thing. Yeah,
Right.
Tell me about it. I put off the whole social thing for a while, so I feel in over my head all the time. Can we make this a series? That's on Alan, but he's always welcome back. What's on here?
Oh, man, for sure. Ask a Black Guy is always fun. So yeah, it's going to be facebook.com/this THISALAN Robinson ROBINSON. There's and from there we'll put up links to support Pulse. We'll put up links to support the Satori House Recovery Project. If you want to support the encampment, I'll put up a link to Jasmine Brown, who is running the. It's not a GoFundMe, it's just a community fund. So folks can be in contact with her. And I got to just let you know right off top, there are some amazing community organizers who have been on Willie Street. Like Latour has been on Lolo. She's been on Willie Street since Tony Robinson's, since her nephew, Tony Robinson, was tragically murdered by Matt Kinney, right? Matt Kinney went on to be a trainer. Now he sometimes rides horses. And let me just give a little bit of context. Our previous police chief said Matt Kinney should be fired. Matt Kinney still has his job. The police chief called for his firing. And
yeah,
the Police and Fire Commission said no, because there were no charges filed. We don't have anything to charge him. We can't touch him. You understand what I'm saying? So like the truth of the matter is, if we want the arrest of Officer Kyle Peterson, we got to be pressuring Ishmael Ozan. And we won't be able to even apply any of that pressure until after DCI finishes its investigation. So we can't put the cart before the horse. We got to keep our eye on the prize. And then when it comes time to pressure the DA, we got to get out into the streets.
Good stuff. Alan Robinson, I appreciate all the time you gave us today. I think it's important information, and I think a more boots on the ground as to what's actually happening, and more importantly, what led to it. And I think that's important for people to know. So thank you very much, and I'll be in touch. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thanks so much.
Take it easy.
All right, now.
Yep. All right. Well, that was enlightening. I find that guy, I could tell from our conversation that we had on the air before we even really got into this, that that was going to be an interesting one to kind of share with you guys. And I appreciate, and to the people that are newer in the chat, I normally am much more interactive with you guys. I hope you didn't take it personally that I wasn't reading any of your comments while we were doing that there, but I was trying to read them personally as I was going through, and normally it is a lot more interactive. I'm going to post a link in the chat right now for anybody who wants to hop on the show and get their thoughts heard. I'm going to throw that right there. You can use that link that I just put in the live stream chat. Go ahead and punch that into your own browser, and it'll send you backstage. And I'm more than happy to bring up anybody who wants to share their own thoughts. I don't know, to those of you that are newer to the program here today, if you if you're interested in getting your thoughts out there, I welcome anybody. So please consider hopping on. And if you're in the Madison area, especially, I'd love to hear what you have to say. But any and all takers are welcome. That link is available. Just look for the post from Ben Cominos right there, and I'm happy to get you on there. Carla saying no need to read comments during the interview. Yeah, I know, but I like to try and keep the entire community involved with the conversation. And yeah, anybody who's new that wants to throw me a subscription here as well. We're trying to build some independent media. Got my voice shut down in the mainstream, I think, because I was too effective. So if you like what we're trying to do here, please consider subscribing to this page. Whether it be on the tube of you, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. Trying to build something out here to act as a voice for people like Alan. So I hope so. You found it by accident, Raul. I welcome that. I'm glad you're here. And I saw your comments there as well. Are you in the Wisconsin area? The number of people that came up to me at Francesca Hong's event yesterday and only told me they found me after I was fired. It was honestly, it was very nice to hear, because I've been doing this job for 4 years, but it feels like you kind of need that name recognition of being fired to get it out there. Let's see what we have here. Nope. All right. It says, I think somebody's trying to speak via TikTok, but for some reason it's not. Oh, well, whatever. Listening out in Jefferson County. Okay, right on. It's it's a grind, I can say that much. But Alan's doing the work. And shout out to TJ, by the way, who I think is in the comments. She is the one who even introduced me to Alan. I did not find him on my own. I'm a one-man operation, so guest booking can be a bit difficult at time to time, a bit cumbersome. The show is much more so a lot of my interactions with the news of the day, but I welcome those kind of conversations as well, because those are the people doing things on the ground. So definitely appreciated there. And for anybody who joined halfway through, didn't get a chance to catch the whole thing, it'll be on my Ben Comino's YouTube page. It takes a while for the video to render, but by the time probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's available under the Lives tab. Every episode of Outside the Box is available in the Lives tab. So if you enjoy what you're hearing here now, go ahead and check it out. And I hope you'll follow along as we continue along here. So thank you for being here very much. And thank you again to Alan. All right. And I am going to send my link to Allie here, if you'll bear with me for 1 second. And then we're going to switch gears into a new topic, but allow me to, hold on, wait, no, there it is. Nope, where'd it go? There it goes. All right. Just bear with me as I send Allie this link right now. Bang. There we go. Allie, I just sent that over to you. So when you get a minute, she's going to be perpetually reposting the link for you guys to take part in the show. If you're interested in doing so, obviously no obligation. You can sit there as a passive observer as well. I am going to enter the realm of national politics now. And honestly, I feel like I could have kept Alan on. Between meeting Alan, and I made the joke several times when we were talking on the phone, I was like, oh, you're going to fit in great on this show, because he had his thoughts about Democrats. And well, I'm one of those shows that recognizes that Republicans obviously have no ideas right now, but the Democrats leave a lot to be desired, and that's kind of the main theme of the show. Brian says Alan had some quotable phrases, but tensions between Asians and blacks caused me to miss the petties and mayonnaise. Precious. That's funny. But so this story, in a world where state violence weren't happening in the southern part of the state. Oh, I apologize. TJ's pronouns are they, them. I apologize for the mistake there, and thank you for the correction. And more importantly, thank you for introducing me to Alan. It was completely... So it was a perfect match. That's why I said I trust your judgment going forward. So if you know anybody else community organizing wise that's looking for a platform, you know how to get in touch with me, TJ. But so in any event, I wanted to jump into this here because it kind of highlights a bigger issue. And I put together a little bit of a teaser before I got into the conversation surrounding the funding for the DNC. Now, if you haven't seen this story yet, the DNC is absolutely fucking broke. They've got no money. They have no capacity to actually, like, they are mortgaging the DNC as it speaks. They are telling bill collectors, do not charge us for anything until after the election, because we need to find a way to make more money. We need to find a way to rally the troops, get more funds in our coffers before we're able to actually pay out any of the bills that we have. And it's interesting because mainstream media has picked this story up, and it's almost August, which means lawmakers are going to take a 6-week vacation, because all European nations get 6 weeks guaranteed vacation, and Congress gets 6 weeks guaranteed vacation. The only people in industrialized world that don't get guaranteed vacation is all of us listening to this right now. But so they're about to go on vacation, which means a lot of mainstream media is going to get desperate for news, whereas shows like this can just interview candidates running for office and whatnot here. But so they are running with this story full-fledged, and they're specifically aiming it at Ken Martin. So there is a bit of a Wisconsin tie in here. And Robin says billionaires want Republicans so they can stay rich. Well, I have a theory about that, and I think you're on to what I'm getting at here. Raul's asking for what happened to all the Soros money. It all went to me. I'm waiting to cash the checks. But so the media is very anxious, or very they're on board for blaming Ken Martin for this shortfall. And allow me to say this first and foremost. I am not impressed by Ken Martin. I am not carrying water for Ken Martin in any way here. This is just a genuine opinion that I think is probably more relevant than the way the failing New York Times, MSNBC, and the rest of the liberal half of the media is talking about this story. You may remember, but it was essentially a two-horse race to fill in on or to take the seat on running the DNC. It was Ken Martin of Minnesota, and then it was our own Ben Wickler. He's doing the national media tour right now because he has a book out. Maybe I'll reach out, try and get him on the show. But if there's one thing he's known for, it's his fundraising. He collects money. He pulled the Wisconsin Democrats out of the abyss. It took time, but it looks as though things are on the right track here in Wisconsin, with us in all likelihood flipping the Senate, and I have a pretty strong feeling about the governor's race as well. As you watch people talk about this, the media is questioning whether or not Ken Martin was the right guy for the job, saying he hasn't had one single positive news cycle essentially since taking the role over. And I have a different suggestion as to why that is. As people are highlighting, the Republicans are the people that are unabashedly pro-billionaire. Tax cuts for the rich. You should be happy that you have the opportunity to work for poverty wages at this company. Imagine if this company weren't here, yada, 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 right? Democrats are the ones that cosplays the good guys, but ultimately become the shills for the billionaire class, just like Republicans. They're just sneakier about it. I think what you're watching happen right now and why the Democratic Party is broke is that they are stuck in between personalities right now. The corporations are noticing that progressives and socialists are starting to win elections, and they're starting to win elections in the cities and states where we were told they could not win elections. The Michigan primary is a week from tomorrow. The Wisconsin primary is 2 weeks from tomorrow. There is a chance that two of the most purple states in the country are both going to have progressive socialists running in some very high-ranking offices, and in my opinion, have the better opportunity to do so. I say all of this to say corporations are watching this happen, and they know, even though the Schumers and Pelosi's and the Bookers and the Richie Torreses and the plenty of establishment types are out there, it is becoming more and more apparent that they're going to struggle to push back against that, and they're going to have to rein in corporations and billionaires to some extent. If by 2028 a trifecta is delivered to the Democrats and they do nothing to rein in corporate greed and wealth inequality, which is a phrase that has essentially fallen off the face of the earth. When's the last time you've heard a Democrat talk about corporate greed that isn't a progressive or a socialist? Don't count Bernie, Zoran, Francesca, El Sayed. Don't count any of the progressives. I'm saying, when have you heard a Gavin Newsom, a Kamala Harris, a Pete Buttigieg? They'll talk about Donald Trump's tariffs. They'll talk about war in Iran. When are they going to talk about record profits every single quarter, basically since COVID started? When are they actually talking about that? They're not. Corporations are waking up to that fact, and they realize, son of a bitch, even though it's still a bunch of corporate Dems, I feel like they're going to have to hammer us a little bit. Not a lot. It's going to be the traditional milquetoast liberal approach. But corporations are realizing if Republicans win, we don't even have to worry about milquetoasts. We can just keep doing things the way we're doing, and the record profits will never end until the system completely collapses in on itself. Then you have the voters, like myself, who know goddamn well that they're not interested in cracking down on corporations and billionaires in a meaningful way, at least not yet. And they are withholding their small dollar donations. You know who is getting small dollar donations? Fran, El Sayed, Mamdani, the normal people that do these kind of things. I just got a chat. That's awesome. There's a Fran chat talking about me. That's lovely. But in any event, they're not getting any of the dollars. So you have corporations saying, we're not giving you a check for $500,000 because I know you're not going to defend oil and gas pipelines. You're not going to defend a status quo that has been acceptable to most people for long enough. And now people are finally getting fed up with that as they continue to struggle with it. And then you have the people who say, we gave you a trifecta in 2020. You increased the child tax credit, got rid of half of child poverty, and rather than doubling that child tax credit, you eliminated it and returned the child poverty back to the levels that we were used to dealing with it. I don't believe that you guys mean business. And while I agree with that, I believe in harm reduction. I voted for Kamala Harris. I hate myself for voting for Kamala Harris, but I voted for Kamala Harris. However, I did not donate a single dollar to Kamala Harris. I did not actually advocate for her in any way. I was like, well, I guess if these are the two options, I'm sure as hell not going to keep dealing with any type of Republican stuff there. So I guess this is the best route that I can do. Sorry, I apologize. I said to check a message there really quickly. And the Democratic media wants you to believe that this is the fault of one man. Oh my God, if only we had chosen Ben Wickler instead of Ken Martin, we'd have so much more money. This is not, maybe that's accurate. Maybe Ben Wickler, maybe Ken Martin just does suck as a fundraiser, as a head of a Democratic Party. But to me, I think they're trying to do the thing the Democratic Party always does. Say we suck at this, highlight it as a problem, and then give you some kind of BS narrative that you can funnel into. The more I get involved in media, the more I realized what percentage of people are happy being empty vessels. They are happy being told what to think about a story, not given a story and then being allowed to determine what to think. I am not telling you that you have to buy into what I'm telling you. I'm saying the media wants you to believe that this is one man's fault and it's Ken Martin. And I would argue 85% of the population, if you said Ken Martin, nobody would know who the hell you're talking about. They would say the guy that won all those rounds on Jeopardy or something like that. They'd have no idea who Ken Martin is. The idea that the Democrats are in their economic woes because of one man or one hiring decision is a laughable assumption to me. To me, what it's representative of is a party that is between two identities right now. As Sensei says, the DNC is the people. I agree. It's the voters. But they are stuck between 4 and 5 voters not wanting any affiliation with AIPAC. 4 and 5 voters saying not only is a 40% tax rate on corporations not radical, it doesn't go near far enough to address an issue. The Democratic Party represents those voters, but is also beholden to the same corporate interests as the Republican Party, and they have been for so long. And those corporations have been what have been buoying them, along with being able to raise money off of, oh, isn't Donald Trump so scary? We are now at a point where the fear of Donald Trump, while pervasive and real and should be acknowledged, is not enough to get people to give you money. It's enough to get people out to vote, but it is not enough to give people money. And for the record, I'll give the Republican Party a 4-1 financial advantage, and I still think they're going to get their asses beat in November. They can't run on anything. They have nothing to run on. So, it's hard. It's a hard situation to be in if you're a greedy piece of shit. And I feel like a lot of people in the Democratic Party are that. Let's see here. What's in the comments? Where'd it go? The DNC broke. Go figure. As with your opening theme, political parties are dead. You now have your to own the media platforms to get anywhere today. To a certain extent, yeah. Ben, maybe we need to introduce a little anarchy to the established order and everything becomes chaos. I mean, chaos is a ladder. Raul thinks, personally, I think one reason the Dems are losing backers is because the Dems are tired of them. Biden-Harris sold the nation out by Joe running a second term. I think there's truth to that. I think that has a lot to do with it, honestly. And again, they're still not running on new ideas. They're running on trials for Trump and his cohorts and holding the people who are fucking around right now to account. An important thing to do, and I'm in favor of that, but it is by no means the only thing that needs to be done right now. Ethan says, if the DNC is broke, the party could respond to their base. Volunteers are free and a lot more effective than blasting mailers and ads. I do agree with you to a certain extent. The only pushback I'd have there, Ethan, is, and this is a common conversation I used to have when I was working at that shitty little radio station. People would always complain to me the closer we got to an election about how many election ads would be playing during my show. And they'd say they're not effective, they're repetitive, I don't even listen to them. There's two options. Either they are effective, because why would you funnel hundreds of millions of dollars into it otherwise? Or it's a money laundering scheme. It's one of those two things. And I think it's the former. Maybe it's the latter. It could also be the latter. It could be a combination of those two things. But I think it's more effective than any of us want to admit. Because as I often state to you guys, I am dealing on outside the box. I am talking to the cream of the crop political followers in Wisconsin. If you are a regular listener of this show, that means you enjoy watching politics. I said the name Ken Martin, and every single one of you was like, oh yeah, the guy who's in charge of the Democratic National Committee. Like, none of you were like, who the fuck is this segment about? I've never even heard of this guy. That's the majority of the population, though. They don't know who Ken Martin is. They don't know that there's elections coming up. They don't know a lot of things that if you follow politics every day feels like common sense. That's who the ads are for. The perpetual bombardment of ads and what people stand for, because they don't allow the people who actually follow this to determine what the narrative is. They're just like, yeah, kitty litter in high schools. Yeah, fascism. You know what I mean? Like, just fill in the blanks here and hope that whatever ad you made was effective enough to make a difference here. Yeah, Raul says he finds it ironic that Republicans fully embrace National Socialism, yet they say democratic socialism is bad. Absolutely. It's a tale as old as time. They're on welfare, or not welfare. They're on Social Security. They're on Medicare. They're on Medicaid, farm subsidies. The list goes on and on. But God forbid it goes to anybody else. Did you see the DS co-chair on Fox Sunday Thoughts? I did hear a couple clips of that. I mean, I'm in favor of a couple of the things that they're talking about. Some of the other things they're talking about are a bit extremist. But again, the only way you're afraid of what the Democratic Socialists and what the left represents is if you are established in life. I can understand why somebody in their 60s or 70s who, statistically speaking, the status quo probably worked for, would be nervous about the idea of abolishing a Senate. When you say to me, Ben, what are your thoughts about this, about the Democratic Socialists saying we should abolish the Senate? I'm like, well, in my adult life, all I know the Senate to be is the thing that stops Medicare for all from happening. The fact that you need 60 votes to get anything popular done, but somehow the Republicans always figure out how to only need 50 votes to do the unpopular thing. Here's how I'll answer that question. Again, I can't prove this, but I know I'm right. I believe to a certain extent, the reason why I was taken off the air is because I exhibit a lot of socialist tendencies, but I express them in a way that not only don't sound radical, but that have most people thinking I'm a moderate when they listen to me talk. And it's like, no, I'm exhibiting the traits of what a democratic socialist is, and it's just that you guys don't see that. You see liberals and you see conservatives, and you kind of conflate what those ideas mean. I gave a speech very similarly at the Green Party convention at Casablanca yesterday where I talked about this kind of stuff. When presented with the right inflection, with the right data, with the right talking points, people hear what democratic socialism is, and they're like, actually, when you say it like that, it makes a lot of sense. Fox News went out of their way to find somebody who talks about this in a way who it sometimes feels aren't even trying to win people over. There's a friend of mine who started a progressive movement, and I respect the hell out of everything that she's been able to get done in a very short period of time. And I oftentimes razz her about the identity politics involved in her movement. And it's a talk about standing up for women in the trans community and all that. And I read the descriptor and I said, obviously, I support this and I'm in favor of everything you wrote here. I said, that being said, if I were inclined not to agree with you, this kind of verbiage is exactly the kind of thing that I would get 3 sentences in and be like, all right, we're moving on. And there's an important question. Are you trying to win or are you trying to send a message? I am in favor of actually trying to change things. I don't care about proving who was right and who was wrong. Obviously, I am higher up in the hierarchy of identity politics as a dude, as a passing white guy, as a cisgender guy, as a straight guy. I check a lot of the boxes. That means like life has been fairly as straightforward as life can possibly be for anybody. It's for me. But that being said, I also know how people who look like me but don't think like me operate. And when you put a woman like the Democratic Socialist president up there on Fox News, that was by design. That was by design. And I think she could have relayed those messages in a way that would make a lot more sense. She could have said, instead of abolish the Senate with no explanation, she would say, our healthcare system is completely broken. We've been trying to fix this for a decade and a half, and every time we try and fix it, we need 60 votes in a Senate that hasn't been any less separated than 53-47 in the last decade and a half. We're never going to get to that 60. And unless we do something drastic, we are going to continue toiling from a healthcare perspective until we do something different. And therefore, I believe the way that the Senate works needs to fundamentally change if we're going to hope to do something about it. And there will still be people that are like, what? That's not the way that it works. But there will be a lot more people that are like, well, I don't know if I agree with that or disagree with it, but I do know it isn't working. And you know what's funny, Jeff? If you told the Republican Party, let's eliminate the Senate so we can pass the SAVE Act, they would say yes. So it's not a matter of the extremist nature of what the DSA is proclaiming. It's that there is enough propaganda out there convincing people that if they want to do it, it's to ruin the country. But we want to do it to save the country. Because I hate to break it to you, the Republican, specifically MAGA, hates the Senate right now because they're not going to get 60 votes. And our own senator, Ron Johnson, is running around the country doing all media except this show to go and tell people, yeah, conservatives need to eliminate the filibuster so we can get the SAVE Act across. And I have been very vocal, both on the radio as well as on this program, saying, I hope they eliminate the filibuster and pass the Save America Act, because if liberals can still come away with a victory, and I realize that's a big if, but if they can come away with a victory, they have no more excuses for Medicare for all. You no longer need 60 votes. All you need is 50 votes in the vice president, and you have Medicare for all. You no longer have an excuse for why you can't do things anymore. Sign me up for that. I am okay with that. The professors hate that idea. They say the filibuster is necessary to make sure that there's not sweeping changes every 4 years that there is a new presidency. And I get that logic as well. But what I know as a 38-year-old is that the filibuster has gotten in the way of addressing corporate greed, fixing poverty, fixing our healthcare system, fixing the banking system, fixing the minimum wage, fill in the blank. The Senate or the Senate parliamentarian, depending on how liberal you want to be, have always gotten in the way of this kind of thing, and no Senate would mean something entirely different. It's also a bit of a layover from a time, and I'm not breaking any facts to you. California has more than 40 times the population of North Dakota, and yet they both have the same representation in the Senate. And it's always going to be right in North Dakota, and it's always going to be left or liberal in California. And so they're always going to have an excuse for why the popular thing can't get done. And so that's my very long way of answering, saying, yeah, I don't think she won over any Fox News voters, and I wish she had gone about expressing her beliefs in a different way. But it doesn't mean that what she's saying is necessarily wrong. McTime says, I used to be a political junkie that always watched the news, but I haven't been paying attention since the election. You know what's ironic? Because you're like the opposite of America. Normally, America does the other thing where they stop paying attention when liberals are in charge, and that's why we keep ending up back here, is because they act like everything's fine now that there isn't an orange man saying mean things at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The amount of coverage that was getting, I didn't see a lot of news this weekend, but the amount of times they were trying to make that a story, that Donald Trump called J.B. Pritzker fat. Like, it's just like, all right, guys, like, you're not doing the left any favors by doing this. Like, is it my kind of humor? No, but grow the fuck up. It is really hot in here today, but I'm not turning the AC on for another 25 minutes, but holy shit. Batten is so cool that he makes socialism cool off with his head. Yeah, well, to a certain extent. My chat is bugging out, so I'm not sure if there's anything. No, we see you, Alex. I haven't been reading a lot of the comments today. It's just been one of those kind of shows. I apologize. I posted a screenshot of the political violence against my person in Discord. FBI agents are tracking his location at this very moment. Wait, what do you mean? Funny, the Senate being 57-43 about health care, but public opinion is 70-30. Hey, Senate, wake up and vote for the public majority. So, Brian, then I say because you're aware enough of what's going on then to kind of see it through that lens. In your estimation, then, is the idea of abolishing the Senate that radical? Because I agree with you. The crux of outside the box has always been built on the idea that more than 60% of people support jazz cabbage legalization. They support increasing taxes on the rich. They support a government option for healthcare to opt as a backstop against these runaway prices. They support, this is again, all more than 60%. Universal childcare, something to address the cost of college. The list goes on and on. A lot of the things that we talk about on this show have a majority of support with Americans, and some of them even have a slim majority of support within the Republican Party. And yet we get no movement on any of these issues ever. And it's mostly because of the Senate. And then sometimes the House plays the villain, but it's normally the Senate. And they can say, we need 60 votes, and those darn Republicans don't want to vote for us. Those darn Democrats, they just hate democracy and America. And that's why they don't pass the SAVE Act. And don't get me wrong. I think the SAVE Act's a piece of shit. Like, I don't, or the Save America Act, both of them, they're pieces of shit. I don't want them to pass. But the fact is, we're here celebrating this now And then inevitably, we will be condemning the Senate for the same reason in 3 years, because it'll be positive shit. And then the Republicans will be like, yeah, I don't want to vote to make life more affordable. And then Republican voters will point to the Save America Act as if it were apples to apples and be like, well, Democrats did the same thing with the Save America Act. So why should we play ball now to reduce my health care bills? And it's like, I really need you guys to enlighten yourselves a little bit here if you would just listen to yourselves for 2 seconds, but I get it. Fear is not a good excuse fear is not a good excuse to not do the right thing. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I believe Republicans have never thought that democracy was anything but a tribal myth. Hunter S. Thompson, that's interesting. I wish he were still around, because I feel like he probably would view the political prism through the same lens in which I do. And like, again, it's no coincidence that Republicans or the Democratic Party is struggling to finance as well as they have been. Carla, you're hooking February up with $2.44. I appreciate that. Thanks for saving me the effort. The system is brittle. The people inside it are scared. Their goodness is conditional. Their order is a thin con. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's what the Joker always said, right? These civilized people will eat each other the second the system falls apart. And I feel that. I feel that. And again, to me, that's why they want the flock cameras everywhere. That's why you're seeing surveillance increase. That's why you're seeing all these different kind of things happen, because they're not intending to fix the system. They're intending to police us more. And what Alan said in the first hour is accurate. White supremacy will eventually come for us all. It's just a matter of keeping us placated until then. All of you, or most of you, are on socials, I'm sure. You've seen the if you don't want to be pew-pewed by the police, then don't stab a police officer. And it's like, those same people, when you hear the story about Ashley Babbitt trying to pull the glass off of a door to crawl through it in order to get to what she allegedly saw was Chuck Schumer, and then she ends up getting pew-pewed, it was, why didn't the police show restraint? And like, you can agree with one of those and disagree with another one. I'm of the same point in both of them. Nobody had to die in these situations, and yet we find ourselves there. And what Republicans don't realize is when they champion their back the blue attitude every time something disgusting happens, they are opening the door for this to happen later. I'm just saying. Harambe, I actually started the show off today with the reporting in Oregon that like 3 people that were pretending to be ICE agents basically just kidnapped a person, which is wild. So, KG, you said Ashley Babbitt was in the wrong. So, was what happened in Madison also in the wrong then? Because a police officer was allegedly slashed or stabbed. Ashley Babbitt didn't actually hurt anybody, at least not on record. She was just in the wrong. She was trespassing. To me, I think if you're looking at it, if you drop the disgust with January 6th out of the conversation, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't think either one of them should have lost their life in the situation that they were in. That's the way I view this. And what Republicans struggle with is they see it with Babbitt and not with any of the hundreds of examples that it happens with minorities. Democrats are quick to highlight it with minorities and then not so much otherwise. And it's the kind of thing you hate when Republican talking points bear out to be true. But like, the more I do this job, the more I realize if you exclusively get your news from liberal media sources, they will highlight every time a murder is done against the LGBTQ community. One just happened, I think, in Germany. There was a stabbing. But if an immigrant does it, that's only covered on Fox News. Fox News covers the immigrants. Um, Liberal news covers the hate crimes, and it's all designed to get people mad at white supremacy or mad at undocumented immigrants or whatever the situation is, and keep us in our camps. And the faster we realize it, and I see you saying the difference was Babbitt was pursuing and Ruiz was fleeing. Exactly. I feel you. I'm telling you, optically, you're going to lose this argument every single time. Neither one of them had to die. And I don't even think that that's a bold statement to make. And the point that I'm trying to make with this is that Republicans will get up in arms about this without acknowledging that their blind defense of state violence every single time it is perpetuated against a minority is what's going to inevitably open the door for the exact same violence against them. And you watched it happen there. Again, it was being brought about for the same circumstances, but then based on your own logic, then Kyle Rittenhouse was in the right. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a slippery slope where we have these conversations, we see these different circumstances, and we will contort ourselves in ways to make it, because we know what we saw happen in Madison was wrong. And we know what we saw on January 6th was wrong. But it doesn't change the fact that both of those resulted in state violence that, in my opinion, did not need to happen. Raul says Babbitt died because she threatened rich politicians. Now we're getting somewhere. That's kind of my whole point there, is that you can sell a Republican on the idea that we need flock cameras in order to catch undocumented immigrants, and they will go along with it. You can sell a Republican on the idea that we need all of this surveillance in order to catch all the black people doing crimes. You can sell a liberal on the idea that we need the exact same technology to catch the Proud Boys, that we need the exact same technology to catch a 3%er, that we need all of these different, that we need all this surveillance. And regardless of which party you identify as, the only consistent is we end up being surveilled much more than we were. We end up in more of a police state where authority has more of a say in whether or not we're going to walk out of one of these situations with our lives or not. And they use it to weaponize it. And they get liberals mad at Ashley Babbitt and the J6ers. And they get conservatives mad at any minority ever that ever did a thing. And I watch it all happen in horror. And I'm just like, oh, God, I can see everybody getting played. And we're not even realizing the track that we're on right now. Like Ethan says, no one ever needs to die in these situations. Death is permanent. And most of the time, oh, shit, I got like 3. It's just a little excited or nervous. 1,000%. And moreover, even if you are stealing a car, like you steal my car, okay, that's really frustrating. And my life is now thrown into flux because of a decision that somebody made, maybe struggling with mental health, maybe struggling financially, maybe just out for a joyride. Who the hell knows? And I'm sitting there now carless. There is no amount that that person who stole my car's life is worth that I'd be like, that Mother Hubbard stole my car, and if you have to take him down to get it back, you do it. That's just not ever going to be the way I think. It's never going to be the way that I think. And for the record, I also don't value the House of Representatives' safety so much that I'm like, Ashley Babbitt had to lose her life. What if she had actually gotten to Chuck Schumer? Like, no, that's not a thought that I'm going to have. It didn't need to happen. I'd like listening to Dr. King's 3 Evils of Society speech. I will look into it. Justin says, I don't understand the Babbitt take. She was warned not to proceed, disregarded, and got shot. Right. Shoot her in the shoulder. Shoot her in the leg. I'm not saying she shouldn't be shot. I'm saying there's probably there was probably a more effective way to handle these kind of things. Allegedly, a police officer was stabbed during the altercation last week. You got to take the threat down. Fine. One in the leg probably would have sufficed. 3 from point blank range in the head is a criminal offense. It's probably not going to go down that way, but it is. And it's hard to look at these things through that lens because obviously I think Babbitt was a jackass, and I think Ruiz was somebody who was going through the rigors of life that didn't deserve to get what he got. They both had the same outcome, and my take is the same in both scenarios. Neither one of them deserved what ended up happening, and I could probably, if I were intending, again, I'm shooting from the hip at this point. We're in the last 10 minutes of the show here. This is oftentimes when this happens. I could probably find you dozens of other examples of moments where this didn't need to happen either, where it still ends up happening. And I can show you people both justifying and not justifying what happened. I don't know if you can shoot that precisely or not. I think you can. I know you definitely don't have to shoot from point blank range. But yeah, this is all assuming, and I see Lorelai bringing that up. I'm assuming there was no other pew pew involved in the conversation. Then it's a whole other matter entirely. Both of these people were unarmed or armed with melee weapons, which I don't know what the rules are in Wisconsin. I know in Pennsylvania, if somebody has a melee weapon and you have a pew pew, it's not as straightforward as you would think. Like, if you shot and you did take somebody's life, there's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to prove that your safety was threatened in a way that deadly force was necessary. That's the rules in my state. I don't, like, obviously in Texas, it's something entirely different, and I don't know the rules here in Wisconsin. But so, I mean, that's my attitude on the matter there. I really don't remember how we even got on this topic. I'm going to be real with you guys. I don't know how we got here, but we're here now. Nothing I can do about it. Yeah, and as Raul says, and this was my argument last week, 4 cops with tasers, pepper spray, and batons had other options. 4-on-1. Exactly. People are saying, well, maybe the taser didn't work. Okay, 3 other people have tasers. Maybe try again before going to deadly force. Standard. That's why I said to Alan, at a bare minimum, I don't know if this guy's going to go to jail or not. And if I know America, I think he's not going to. He probably should be, but I think he's not going to. At a bare minimum, he should never be working in law enforcement again. And I don't even think that's a bold declarative statement. He should never be involved in law enforcement again. He does not have the capacity to show good control or decision making under duress. And once you are proven that you don't have that, it's not a skill that you can learn. I say it all the time. If I had a speech impediment, I would not speak publicly for a living. I wouldn't expect you guys to put up with the fact that it's hard to understand what I'm saying, but you just deal with it because this is what I want to do with my life. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. It's you have to acknowledge that, and very clearly, whether it's an anger issue, because he allegedly did get attacked with a knife, or a lack of calmness in nerve-wracking situations, whatever it is, far be it for me to judge. I'm jumpy as fuck. It's the reason I'm not a police officer, because I know that if I were like on edge, I'd probably make a bad decision. So I don't put myself in that position. Did the PA law see the episode of It's Always Sunny when Mac and Charlie debate swords versus guns? Bang, 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 bang. Yeah, right. Michael Fanone has his own YouTube show. I follow Capitol Police. Who, yeah, now I'm familiar with the guy. I see him all over. Yeah, but in any event, so that's my thoughts on the matter. I feel like I've made some enemies with this one, but that's okay. We don't all have to agree all the time. I'd actually prefer not doing that. We're just about to wrap it up. Jesus, it's so warm in here. You guys are just going to have to deal with the air conditioner for the last 5 minutes. Just a quick reminder for tonight. There is a David Crowley event in Appleton, same place where the Francisca Hong event was, the Appleton Beer Factory. I'm going to be there. Oh, Alex wants to hop on for the last couple minutes. I welcome that. But Appleton Beer Factory, 5:30 to 7:30. I have a night show at 7. I'm not going to be there for the whole time, but I figure I'm going to show up for an hour, get some thoughts out there, try and meet David. We're going to get him on the show hopefully this week, if not early next week. But if you can make it, I'll be taking pictures there. You guys, I'm sure, have seen the pictures from the Hong event. Very crowded, but I'll wait. I saw Alex stand up, and then we'll bring her on here as soon as she sits back down. Yeah, so YouTube can't hear the AC because the mic is sound canceling, but TikTok can, and they always give me shit every time I turn it on. That's cool, Carla. I didn't expect you to. Alex, I'm going to bring you up here. All right. Are you doing something? Okay, cool. I'm going to bring you up.
Okay. Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Okay. I just wanted to speak on a little bit about what happened in Madison because there was a interesting little thing that I was reading on my phone the other day about not code of conduct, but actually how a walkthrough of a situation would look. And the level of escalation when it comes to, and I don't want to say targeting an individual, but when you can see someone who presents as unhoused, that does actually change the method that MPD, according to its own code of conduct and communications PDF files that are very easily accessible on Google, it would actually make this one of the lowest priority calls that they would need to respond to, and they would only be sending out a single officer for this call. And when we talk about over-policing and systemic racism within the policing system, we really need to get particular about exactly why this is the way it is. According to their own rules, we only exercise the minimum force and authority necessary to achieve legitimate law enforcement objectives. We demonstrate the highest standards of self-discipline, even when no one is watching or listening. Well, fuck me. There's fucking flock cameras on every corner. Someone's always watching. Someone's always listening. And if it gets to a point where nobody is recording, how long before we just start seeing people taking over flock cameras to access this before they pull it, scrub it, and do something else with it? It goes on to talk in the core values and guiding principles of the police department that members shall exercise restraint in the use of force, employing the only amount of force necessary to perform their duties and aligned with department policy. I cannot find the exact PDF, but it also mentions when someone appears aggravated or less than in a normal state of mind, being able to walk up to them and say, "Hey, bud, what's going on?" all the officers are instructed to maintain a safe distance in case that person has a weapon hidden or concealed on their body. I don't know a single unhoused person who does not carry some sort of personal safety weapon, because it's just something that you need to do when you're unhoused. Other people who are unhoused might take advantage of you. You might have beef with someone and, you know, not want to run into them without anything to defend yourself. And it makes no sense to me that when we're sitting here and analyzing this entire murder of a community member, that we're not sitting here and going, well, no, you actually didn't follow your policy. You did not follow your procedure. And we get stuck in this kind of a rut where we want to sound palatable rather than bring information. And I think that as white people, allies, talking specifically to y'all and us now, we cannot just take what Black leadership is telling us and regurgitate that ad nauseum. It does absolutely nothing to help anybody. And if anything, it makes it worse for people who are in minority neighborhoods. I don't know exactly what the best term to describe it would be, but someone who's actually been displaced and put into a poor neighborhood next to a gentrified area. Like, we can't just sit here and talk about buzzwords. We have to be very matter of fact. No, it is their own code of conduct that they're breaching, and they displayed that.
I just want to interject here, because in the day after, I did state, once you know the person has a melee weapon, why can't you form a 15-foot perimeter around the guy and slowly talk him down and walk with him? Don't let him outside of the perimeter. Don't get so close that you are in slashing range. You have tasers. You have non-lethal distance measures to take. I said all of it. So I'm 100% there with you. Today it wasn't, because, again, I wasn't anticipating this Ashley Babbitt Ruiz comparison, and so I've been kind of firing from the hip here quite a bit. But just to be clear, yes, I'm not naive or, not saying that this had to happen this way. Like, very clearly there were non-lethal measures that could have happened. And of course, when I did that segment, I had MAGAs on my TikTok saying, oh, so now you're a police expert. I'm like, no, not at all. I just have basic common sense. And I would say, if me and 3 friends were in that situation, that's how we'd handle a guy that had a knife. And you would
exactly
would do something similarly.
As also another comeback would just be, well, I'm literate. Yeah. So yeah. I can read. It doesn't take me going through, what is it, 80 hours of courses to have to understand that what I read on the paper is the terms of my employment, like any other job. I'm not going to go down to Kohl's and have someone hand me Kohl's cash and say, you stupid bitch, this isn't money. I can't take this.
Right.
Like, we need to understand what we're getting into, but we also really, really need to focus on the fact that if we're going to talk about systemic racism, you better be able to break that down into a nitty-gritty, finely detailed and nuanced, almost fucking novella. Okay? Like, you need to be able to understand what you're talking about, which is why I wanted to just talk a little bit of shit and address the audience, because if you don't know what you're talking about, you are not going to be helping anybody. You're going to be doing a disservice to everyone around you and yourself, because that time that you were spending yapping about fun to say, easily accessible buzzwords, like, you could actually just spend time finding out ways to make yourself a better teacher, so you don't have to rely on those buzzwords, and you can have conversations with people who you might not see eye to eye on about a situation. But fuck, even the Ashley Babbitt thing. I was bartending at the time, and I had quite a few conversations with people where I was like, well, don't you think? And if you lead the horse to water, you can't make them drink, but sometimes they do kind of get the cogs turning in their head, the smoke starts blowing out their ears, and they do get it. But you got to be able to explain it. So that's all I wanted to say, I guess, is just we really need to focus on a lot of important stuff, because the common denominator that I keep seeing coming out of Corey's passing is, well, he was a criminal. He had a criminal history. He had like 86 charges or something like that. I don't give a fuck. Sorry.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me.
Actually, the reason why they even pursued him to begin with is I guess he had a warrant out. So they saw him doing the thing. They were ready to just say, fuck it. We're not going to pursue any further. And then when searching it, they saw that there were warrants for his arrest. And then that's what led to the eventual pursuit. And then the situation that we saw. And had it been a one-off, it might have been less likely, at least based on their interpretation for that. Again, I'm with you. But
there was no caller. Is the caller, has that been debunked now? There was no Karen who said that he was looking into car vehicles, or was that still
no,
the
I
initial?
think he was looking into the vehicles. He saw the officers, got spooked, and ran away. He has a history of this. So one of the officers was like, I think that was this guy. They confirmed that it was this guy. And then they did a search. They were like, there's a warrant out. And then they began pursuing. I think otherwise they were probably just going to fuck off otherwise. So,
and you know what? They're fucking off majority of the time that they're on the clock anyway. So I don't know why they didn't just keep doing that. But no, I'm getting political. I'll let you end your show.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. You know what's nice is back when I was on the radio, I would talk for 2 straight hours and people would always wait to the last 5 minutes to call me then. And now we're bringing it back on the radio. So that's a good feeling. But I think she's right in her assessment on the matters there as well. And yeah, systemic racism is 1,000% real, Raul. I don't think anybody is going to push back against you on that one. I feel that. But all right. David Crowley event 5:30 to 7:30. I saw Sensei say I should do the live from there. Maybe I might do that. Actually, we'll see how long I end up staying and if it's worth it. We'll see what happens. If not, Ben After Dark 7 to 8 p.m. We'll be back on Outside the Box, back on that bullshit. 9 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. Jumping into the biggest stories. I do have hold on. I have a candidate coming in. Grace Abbott's running for the 56th Assembly District. We spoke with Shauna Riley about 2 weeks ago. It's available on my YouTube page. Grace is going to be on the show at 10:30 tomorrow. Same district. Really liking what I'm reading about her, so it should be an interesting conversation. That's at 10:30, plus all the biggest stories of the day in the lead up to that. Thank you very much for being here, everybody. We will talk to you again later today or tomorrow. Glad you found me too, Raul. Talk to you soon.